welcome to Chapter 9, How Can Teachers Help ELLs Develop Academic Language? This presentation was created by Laura Pals, Jessica Shively, and Shireen Bromander. Some highlights of this chapter was developing academic language in your ELL students, how that academic language is used in schools, and most importantly, how will your students be assessed? Are they assessed on their content knowledge or on their English proficiency? So let's get started. Here we go. We'll begin with academic discourse. Discourse is when a child or adult is trying to assimilate or become like their peers. Primary discourse happens when you are growing up and learning the rules of how to communicate with others in your native language. However, secondary discourse happens when emergent bilinguals begin to interact with English speakers. Secondary discourse can also happen at school, so children understand how to communicate and be around others in a different environment. This graph can also be found in your textbook on page 226. It shows 3 levels of reading from basic, intermediate, and disciplinary. It also shows the skills that are taught at each level and the typical texts that are taught at those levels. The disciplinary level, which is normally in grades 9 through 12, presents to be the most difficult. Cummins observed that English language learners were overrepresented in special education populations of schools in Canada. As he investigated the reasons why, he discovered that these students had trouble listening to lectures in school, reading the textbooks, and writing school papers. They spoke and comprehended English every day, but they lacked the academic English needed to perform these tasks. It takes about 2 years to develop conversational fluency in a new language, and it takes 4 to 9 years to develop academic language. The original names were the basic interpersonal communicative skills, which was the conversational language, which we called BICS, and the cognitive academic language proficiency for academic language, which we used as CALP. Some thought that cognitive academic language proficiency was meaning that ELLs lacked basic cognitive abilities. So Cummins changed the names to something that would avoid these misunderstandings. The new terms are conversational fluency and academic language proficiency. Bridging from conversational to academic language can be done through strategies that you probably have learned in all educational courses. Some ideas are hands-on activities, small group work, introducing vocabulary words, scaffolding verbal usage through questioning, clarifying, and using vocabulary words. Teachers should fluidly move from conversational to academic language while instructing. Academic language is both context-reduced and cognitively demanding. One aspect that makes academic language different from conversational language is the vocabulary. Conversational language originates from Anglo-Saxon vocabulary, and academic language has mostly Greek or Latin roots. Conversational vocabulary is used in everyday conversations and often featured on TV. In contrast, academic language is found in academic texts. English language learners acquire conversational language first to communicate with others on a daily basis. It is best that students only learn a few vocabulary words a week. Students thoroughly learn the words when they are not overloaded with a long list. These words should only cover the most important themes they are learning. The best way to teach academic vocabulary is to 1. Provide rich and varied learning experiences. Provide opportunities to develop oral language and extended reading time. Next, teach individual words. It can be helpful for students to fill a graphic organizer to help learn the word. Third, teach word learning strategies. For example, students can learn to use context clues, rely on cognates, and use reference tools. Finally, foster word consciousness, or an awareness of an interest in words and their meanings. Teachers can do this by pointing out similarities and differences in words and making a point of using new words as they lead class discussions. In addition to vocabulary, conversational and academic language, or the spoken and written text, also have differences in style. Spoken texts are more interactive and show more personal involvement, whereas written text shows a more detached style. Spoken texts are more concrete in style as opposed to written texts, which are much more abstract. Spoken texts are more immediate in nature, while written texts are delivered in a reported style, typically telling about events that happened in the past. Often, ELLs write either short, simple sentences or very long sentences that consist of a series of short sentences, joined by common conjunctions, such as and or because. Their sentences have a low lexical density. Lexical density words include nouns with some verbs, some adjectives, and some adverbs. An example is, you'll see, example A shows the workers at the plant were very productive, and this increased the company's profits. The word productive is an adjective in example A, where the words were changed slightly in example B, and the word productive was changed to productivity. It reads, the workers' high productivity increased the company's profits. Example B has a greater lexical density because it does not have the conjunction word and. Example B is what we want to teach our academic language with. It has higher academic language and is also more understandable to that ELL student. Language and content objectives is something that we have learned in past courses. That content objective is based on state and national standards. It answers the what. What are you about ready to learn? Whereas the language objectives are based on the state English language proficiency standards, which is the how. How are you going to learn it? It involves things that may need to be listened to, spoken, written, or read. All ESL teachers are encouraged to always use language and content objectives to show the students what they're going to learn and how they're going to learn it. When it comes to assessing that academic languages, it can be hard. The ELL student is assessed much more than any of the native English speakers, and unfortunately, the ELL generally will score lower due to their low English proficiency. This can be a challenge for the ELL student to understand the difference between being tested over their idea of the content or their knowledge of English language. Some teachers may modify their tests by allowing the students to use a bilingual dictionary or having someone read the test to them, or just give them more time. It has been researched and found that these are not always effective modifications. When you are modifying a test, make sure you're using the lexical language. Make sure it is clear and free of any extra words. When doing so, though, make sure you're considering that it is a very time-consuming task to modify assessments. It requires a certain expertise. And even after you're done with all that work, the student may still have low English proficiency of the test. In Iowa, the English Language Proficiency Standard is called the ELPA 21. Students are assessed on that once a year. Throughout the other school districts may use the TESOL, which also measures the same standards. It has 5 proficiency levels. It has 5 grade level clusters, and it's divided into 4 language domains, such as speaking, listening, reading, and writing. To find the ALPA 21 proficiency standards that are used in Iowa, follow the link down below. We'd like to thank you for listening to our presentation. The resource used for this information was our textbook of Between Worlds: Access to Second Language Acquisition.